I have a problem. Okay, I have several problems, but one of them is that I've never met a granular synth engine that I didn't absolutely love. Each one that I've used so far does things just a little bit differently. Now, there's a growing list of hardware options that are available, and we all know that I love my hardware. You've got the OG Clouds, Morphogene, Live Loop, GR1, Bitbox, Lemon Drop, R-Bar, Akbar, and let's face it, I want all of them. Even you, Admiral. Sometime last year, a new VST caught my eye, and it's kind of become a go-to in my setup at this point. Major part of my workflow. Much as I love my hardware, it's really nice having something in the DAW that's so flexible, has so many modulation options. It's really easy to use, easy to drag and drop your own samples into, and immediately get something interesting. So if, like me, you enjoy recording your own sounds and dragging them into a granularizing sampler, then why not drag and drop something into Native Instruments Straylight and let it do its magic? Or I guess maybe you might want to tell it how to do its magic. So let's see how that works. So I was making this felt piano contemplative classical track, as I've been known to do in the past. And in the past, I've used the aforementioned Clouds or Morphogene to create these interesting textures, often from reverb tails that I would chop out and then run through a granular processor. I love the sound of reverb that's being fractured and kind of sounds like it's breaking apart. So I've pulled up an instance of Straylight, and I've set it to the init patch, which is rather uninteresting. Notice that the sample layer, we have two layers in the Straylight. That's an important thing to point out. We have a sample layer. Samples, pretty direct sample playback, as you would expect it. You do have some settings in here that we can get into later, but for today, I'm actually going to turn off the sample layer entirely because I'm really more interested in this granular layer. So I could have very easily chopped up some reverb tails, as I just mentioned, and dropped those directly in here, and then I would have a very finite sample to work with, and it would be beautiful and wonderful. But due to extreme laziness, I decided I think I'll just drop this entire felt piano track into the granular engine and see what happens. So that's what I did. So here is the primary recording that I made of my piano. We can start just a little bit of that. Pretty typical felt piano, close mic setup there. Now let's say that I want to use that as my granular sample. This is probably going to be unnecessarily difficult to do because of the size of my screen. And I'm just going to drop it in, and it's going to take a minute, and what do you know, it has that sample queued up and ready to go. Now if I play, it's going to immediately start scrubbing through the sample. I'm going to move the position over a little bit so that we can, I don't know why I'm not hearing anything. Maybe because I still have this soloed like an idiot. Okay, here we go. What do you know? That's nice. Now I will have to find the root key position, so I believe this piece is in, yep, it's G minor. I'm going to set my root key to something like G4, sounds good. Do it! There you go. G5. Oh, wrong way. I always go the wrong direction. There we go. Now we are in the correct octave. So I can just scrub through this sample. Notice also that it works a lot like Serum, where you can adjust your modulator range using this slider here. It'll show up on the wheel on top. This is your offset or your start position. And then if I move my Y axis, which I can set up over here, should have done this beforehand. Y axis is going to be there. X axis.
Yes, right there. There's the X axis.
Is going to be there. So now, when I'm moving my joystick, you can see that it is mapped. That is beautiful. And I've just whacked my microphone for the first time of many, I'm sure. So now that I have my entire sample dropped in to the granular side, I can go in, change the start position. And this is the point at which I begin to just search for sweet spots. That's nice. I can change the size. I can actually limit the range. Unlink that. I like that. Yeah, I love finding these little fragments. Of course, I can make them even more fragmented by changing the crossfade times. You see this little X here, that's just telling me that it's currently mapped to the X on the XY pad. And if I change this, I'll change it to a positive value, you'll see as I move my joystick from left to right, it's now sweeping through. And I can scrub through the position using the Y-axis. It's also polyphonic, which is really nice. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful already. So this is not exactly the part that I used in the track. I'll show you that in just a minute, what I did use, but I am now filled with regret that I didn't find this particular sweet spot before now. So this is all well and good if you have a hardware controller and you want to manually sweep through things, which is a lot of fun. But let's say that you just have a MIDI keyboard or something and you want it to do all of this modulation on its own. Well, you can do that too. You have two LFOs down here at the bottom. We scroll down, you see that we have send effects. We have macros, which you can set to any number of parameters. Modulation, we have two shapers, which can be triggered by the XY pad. Any of these macros can be used to sweep through the shapers. The LFOs, which is one thing that I like to do, so I can draw in a shape here, and then have LFO1 control the rate at which we go through that. So I can change, let's say I change the Y position, or rather the granular position, to shaper 1. And now you'll see, yeah, it's doing this thing. I can slow it down. I believe you can have it just run through it once with the retrigger, and it should stop when it gets to the end. I hope. Please stop. Yay! Oh no! I lied. Oh, here it is. Once. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, so you have a lot of different options for how you want these LFOs to operate. Obviously, we have random, which is another great thing. I can just switch this to LFO1 and have a random. When you have an interesting source like this, if I do say so myself, you don't necessarily need external effects, because one of the interesting things about granular synthesis is how it breaks apart those cooked-in effects to me. But you have a lot of effects here on the back end. Notice we have separate effects lanes for the granular engine and for the sample player engine. So again, we're just dealing with the granular side today. Filters, EQ, drive, gates, reverb, delay, all of the usual suspects here. Let's add a little drive to it. I really like bit reduction. course, I'm doing so little compared to what I could do. Could detune each of the grains. It's already doing pan jitter. Can change the envelope independent for the sample and the granular engine. So let's say you had a piano sample and you wanted the granular to fade in. That's the idea. Let's say that I had too much low end in that granular section because we have two different effects lanes. I could go in and add, let's say a filter. Could do EQ as well. You have many, many different types of filters, like let's say a high pass, which is going to take the low end out of that granular side. That's really nice. That's really beautiful. Obviously, you can save your own stuff, as I have several patches here. Okay, turning that back off. On top of these effects lanes, and we've already talked about the XY pad, how we can use that to swipe through a number of different things. There's also a little mod matrix here that you can get even more complex with your routings. We have another LFO that we haven't even touched yet. Let's say that I wanted to route the second LFO to some effects, for instance. Like I could reduce the bit rate of our lo-fi drive. Let's slow it down even more. That is great. I love that. We could add some motion to this. Our first LFO. Could layer that with the piano. And of course you can mix those independently as well, those two layers. That is great. Okay, on top of all of that, we have our two effects lanes. You also have master effects. The thing is pretty crazy. We can put a limiter at the end. We can put EQ, filter, all of those same effects over the whole patch. Again, I don't like to do too much over here other than just some gentle shaping, just because part of the draw of granular synthesis is feeling all of those textures and how they break apart. So I don't want to do things like put it through a giant reverb that's just going to blend everything back together and kind of blur the edges. I love the edges. All right. So that's what I've done in, like, I don't know. I've probably been rambling longer than I think, but only a few minutes. We've gotten to a really interesting place. And I'm only using a tiny part of this sample, and I'm only using a few modulators, and yeah, not even really messing with the sample playback engine too much at all. That's pretty remarkable. So now I want to show you the patch that I used for this track. Really, it's the same thing. I did put a little decapitator at the end of it and shaped the EQ, was just an Ableton stock EQ. Whoops, there we go. So this is what I use in the track. And then I have the XY pad, which moves things around. I've got a couple layers of this going on in the track, and I think it works really, really well. So I am beyond thrilled with Native Instruments Straylight. I think it's an incredibly versatile VST, very quick and easy to get granular stuff going, which is right up my alley. So I'm incredibly happy with how all of this blended together in my new track, which you can listen to. It'll be the first link in the description if you want to hear the whole thing, or you could stick around and watch it right now. Hey, if you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. Would appreciate a thumbs up on the video if you got anything out of it. Let me know in the comments your favorite granular synths, because I'd love to check them out, because I really just need all of them at this point. You can also check out this video down below where I compare the Make Noise Morphogene with a module you may not be as familiar with that also does granular synthesis, the Reflex Live Loop. So check that out. Comment, like, subscribe, all of those YouTube things, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.